And now, it's Coast Vue with Ricky Mathews. Brought to you by J. Allen Toyota and AGJ Systems and Networks on SuperTalk 103.1 FM.
Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi such an amazing place to live, work, and play. And without any big speeches today, I want to move straight to my first guest, Julian Rankin, who's the executive director of the Walter Anderson Museum of Art. It's someone who is a good friend and someone I just enjoy spending time with. How you doing, Julian?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back.
It's good. Look, you're a recent One Coast winner. I have a lot of One Coast winner folks that are going to be on the show. I acknowledge that, but you're on the show today, not just because of that. You're on the show today because I want to get an update on what you're thinking these days. You're just a good thinker. But before we get into your world, I want to show our Facebook and YouTube audience a picture. And Kyle's going to pull it up now, but I'll tell for the radio audience, I'll tell you what you're taking a look at. And it's Julian as just a young boy with an Atlanta Braves hat on. And, where you were raised, Julian, had a big impact on you as an Atlanta Braves fan, but you got to be thrilled they're in the World Series now.
Oh, definitely. And that's so funny that you captured that. That was, taken by my photographer father back in 1989. And was born in Atlanta and then moved to Mississippi as a one-year-old child, and always had that Atlanta Braves hat, and we still got it, and our one-year-old wears it today. So, yeah, I mean, I remember Sid Bream and all those good old days and all the pictures we had, and it's wonderful to be able to see them back, and let's just hope they pull it off, get it done.
So, I mean, it got in your blood as a young guy, man. I mean, where you lived, you could almost literally hear the fans screaming, couldn't you?
Oh, yeah, the old Fulton County Stadium. And, I had a charmed upbringing everywhere I've lived, but Atlanta was a beautiful place to grow up. And the thing about the Braves, it's kind of like the Saints. I mean, if you live in a certain part of the South, we don't have as many professional teams. So I think the blood of fandom is really thick for the teams that we do follow. And the Braves and the Saints, both those occupy, those kind of spaces for me. And again, we've seen success, but I really want to see them close the deal.
Yeah, I know you do. Got a lot of family members who are big Braves fans and a lot of friends who are big Braves fans. So it's fun to see them in the World Series. That is for sure. So Julian, I've had Robert St. John on recently. Robert St. John, the entrepreneur, restaurateur. He's got his PBS shows, and he's just a worldly guy, does his tours to Italy and brings the Italians back to Mississippi to show them all the great places. But, if you want to get something done, you and I have talked about this before, you need to find a busy person to do it. And you would think the last person on earth that would have time to do a definitive book on Walter Anderson would be someone like Robert St. John, but he did. And, he tells me the book is amazing. In fact, I think he had hoped to get copies of. He's got his copy. He's got a small number of copies, but the big number of copies won't get here for probably mid-November because they're on a ship with a lot of other goods sitting off the port of California right now. But he really bragged on you, incidentally, and of course I'm not surprised that you and WAMA, the Walter Anderson Museum of Art, had opened up the vault there and have been extremely supportive with time and resources. But, you've seen a copy of it. What you think?
Oh, it's wonderful. And the kind of full story behind that, as you say, Robert St. John has empowered this new book on Walter Anderson, and his collaborators, a man named Anthony Thaxton, who grew up here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast and is a filmmaker and producer and graphic designer and works with Robert and his team on a lot of these MPB shows. And so it's a comprehensive 21st century look at Walter Anderson's life and art. And so there's a big book like you're talking about. There's also a documentary film. And so just last week, we actually screened the film for the family of Walter Anderson, the extended family here at the museum. And Anthony Thaxton, who again is collaborating with Robert, was unveiling it for the first time to an audience that was not himself. And wonderful, wonderful film that talks to people from the museum to the art world and takes you through the whole history, not just of Anderson's life, but how the museum came to be and all the things that happened in between, the Smithsonian show and 2003, those kind of things. And that's going to be on MPB starting November 4th. I think it runs 4 or 5 times that first week. So folks who, we all think we know our heroes and our legends like Walter Anderson, but for folks who, want to reacquaint themselves, there's so much new art. Not new, of course, in the sense that it was made yesterday, but new that we haven't really even seen in person a lot of the art that is in the film and the book. We did open our vault and give access to everything we had, but the family also did the same. And so there's stuff in there that folks who have followed Anderson for the entirety of their lives will be seeing for the first time. And it's really, really cool.
That's why I'm assuming you're in the documentary.
I'm in there, several of our staff members are, in addition to the family who sat down for hours of interviews. So it's almost like a definitive oral history, too, of the 4 Anderson siblings, the sons and daughters of Walter Anderson. And there's humorous parts. There's a lot of truth in it, and it's a really good look back. There's so many cool films that have been made, especially in the 1970s, which I don't think we've talked about on here, but there was that film, The Islander, which starred James Best, who was from the Dukes of Hazzard. He was an actor who famously was on that show, and that ran in the museum for decades. And it was very charming and quaint and interesting, but it was, of course, made in the 70s. And so there needed to be a more contemporary look at Anderson's life, and that's what this documentary is. And we're really proud to be a part of it.
Is it something that once it's done its run, that will be played at the museum on a regular basis?
It is. Segments of that film and even things that aren't in the film will encompass a new introductory space in the museum that we're working on. So, that'll be part of the visitor experience for years to come. And like I said, it's really a threefold project. They came out with a book, they came out with a documentary, and then they've really accumulated this archival body of research that is going to benefit our visitors and then scholars in the future too.
It sounded like Robert and his collaborator were just a great team.
Oh yeah, I mean, like you said, Robert St. John always has a million things going and accomplishing everything from cooking a dish to opening a new restaurant to doing what he's doing in Jackson, Mississippi, which includes a bowling alley and a theater, and he's developing community wherever he goes. But he also has a connection personally to Walter Anderson, and then as well as his collaborator Anthony Thaxton is similarly multi-talented, and so I'm really impressed with the bandwidth of both those individuals and their team to pull this off. It really is an immense amount of work, and it's going to really be delightful and thrilling for people to see.
That's kind of Robert's personality, total immersion. If you think about a great chefs completely immerse themselves in their food as they investigate. Like, for example, to do his new restaurant, his new Tex-Mex restaurant, I don't know if you followed him while he did the work to launch that. Not only was he wrapped up in the design of it, but they traveled the U.S. eating at Tex-Mex restaurants. I don't know how many meals he ate over the course of months to investigate what did he want his menu to be. And so, I mean, it's like beyond immersion what he does. When he talks about the Tuscany region of Italy, he does it so passionately. I mean, total immersion. And he said, that region of Italy is very much like Mississippi. The people are very similar. Different language, but very similar in that way. Or when he went over to Europe with his family and went on the tour and for 6 months, bought I think a Volvo station wagon when he landed, and that's what they drove. I don't know how many thousands of miles. And I named places in Croatia that he had been to with his family. That's the kind of guy you want being involved in a project like Walter Anderson, because there's so much nuance around this guy, way beyond just being an artist. And you and I have talked about that before, but he's really a Renaissance man in so many different ways, isn't he?
Yeah, well, artists, we all suffer for our craft, and I guess it's good to be a chef, because then your suffering is at least delicious food everywhere you go. But even that, I'm sure, was not always as romanticized as we might think. But I think that's actually a good thing to keep in mind about process. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Certainly, if you're researching for a restaurant or writing a book or working on documentary film, but also if you're trying to do anything in a community, if you're developing, something, a mixed use development in a town, or you're trying to start a new business or run a political campaign to change the way, government is run. this all takes time, and the things that we see at the end of the line, the product, the thing that comes to the table on a beautiful plate, or the thing that airs on MPB and it looks all shiny and new, or the things that are in a museum, those are the results of a lot of hard work and dedication. And that's one of those through lines that we talk about that comes out of art making and the artistic process, that's much more than just being talented at seeing an image or drawing something on a page. It's more of an ethos and a mentality that cuts across all these different sectors of life and work. And it's a good example with Robert and Anthony, and also with all the other people who are doing wonderful things. We can't overstate the amount of work it takes to accomplish anything good, and the patience it takes.
Yeah, boy, and as usual, the way you said that, there's an ethos to it all. And there's a passion and a dogged determination and a willingness to sort through the clutter of it all, because boy, in the process, can you only imagine how much data they could collect on Walter Anderson, and to have to go through the process of figuring out what's going to make it into the book, what's going to make it into the documentary, what's going to make it into these other parts of the other dimensions of telling the story as it relates to that. We'll talk more about that when we come back on the other side. But this is Julian Rankin, the executive director of the Walter Anderson Museum of Art. We'll see you after this break.
It's 2021 and J. Allen Toyota still has a lifetime warranty on all new Toyotas. They all come with Toyota Care. We've got a great rental department. We've got great used cars. We've got a parts and service department ready to help you. So when you think Toyota, think J. Allen Toyota.
If Alexa's part of your life, you've got one more way to access SuperTalk. SuperTalk Mississippi is now available on Amazon Alexa devices. Once enabled, just say, Alexa, play SuperTalk Mississippi at any time and start listening. It's that easy. Just one more way to stay informed and connected with your state. Learn more at supertalk.fm/Alexa. SuperTalk Mississippi. SuperTalk Mississippi. Now available on Amazon Alexa devices.
When COVID started, Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply began stocking hard-to-find PPE items. When Amazon and other mega internet companies were out of stock or inflating prices, Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply was providing local schools and businesses vital PPE supplies at fair prices. When your office needs PPE supplies, office furniture, or products to keep your business operating, consider Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply. We sell that too. Buy local.
Thousands of Bulldog fans have subscribed to the Thunder and Lightning podcast. Have you? On each episode, Brian Haydad and Joel Coleman give you an inside look at your Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Thunder and Lightning podcast is free and available on demand at supertalk.fm and on your smartphone. Just search for Thunder and Lightning on iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thunder and Lightning from SuperTalk Mississippi, covering the Bulldogs like no one else. SuperTalk Mississippi.
From outer space, visitors from another world. We've had contact with bug-eyed monsters.
This is actually a flying saucer.
Flying saucer?
I'm from another planet.
Where late nights are kind of weird.
Well, they must have a reason for their visits.
The unexplained, the weird, and the downright creepy. Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. Late nights. SuperTalk Mississippi. Feeling down? Here's your prescription for a daily dose of good news and positive vibes. Good Things with Rebecca Turner. Every afternoon, Rebecca highlights all the good things happening right here in the state you call home. Daily exposure to Good Things with Rebecca Turner may cause smiling, feelings of positivity, happiness, and even laughter. When you experience these symptoms, tell your friends to listen.
Okay.
Weekdays starting at 2 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi and now on Amazon Alexa devices.
Hey, guess what? Bob is back, now at 106.3, playing the 80s, 90s, and whatever. Check us out, the new Bob 106.3.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast Vue with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. I never know where the conversation is going to go when I talk to Julian Rankin, and I love just letting it go where it's going to go. But what's interesting about what we were talking about before we went to the break was this whole notion of immersion. This whole notion of, just giving everything you got, working your fingers to the bone, burning the midnight oil, really dedicating yourself to a process that enables you to be successful on the other end. All of what he said about that ethos, that whole notion of what it takes to be successful, applies whether you're working for a nonprofit, whether you're working in your private life, no matter what you're doing. But you got to be first willing to do it, don't you, Julian?
Yeah, it really is true. And I think what people get caught up on, maybe younger people who haven't experienced the way the world works, which is, as you say, that the result of anything good comes from labor and attention to detail and determination, is that, that they don't understand that. And when I go out and, we have programs that are off-site. A great example, we have a project in Pascagoula, Mississippi called the Pascagoula Public Art Enterprise. And the whole purpose of it is to put public sculptures, steel sculptures, in downtown Pascagoula and in concert with their economic development and redevelopment plans. And students at their CCTI campus, their College and Career Technical Institute, are fabricating these and helping design them and all this. So while there will be a product at the end that's a permanent sculpture downtown, the process, which is the education, is even more important, or certainly equally important as what comes after. And it's really cool. The other day we were just talking here about labor and accomplishing giant things. We had our artists, 2 sculptors who are working with us to collaborate with the students, take a trip over to Ingalls Shipbuilding. And so Ingalls was gracious enough to let us come over. And the reason for our trip was to source, identify, so that we can use some of their scrap steel to help repurpose that into some long-term, permanent sculptures, which is such a cool idea that, they generate all of this material that, gets recycled and put back into other projects. And this way we can kind of step in before that recycling process happens and actually literally take some of the steel that they're offloading after building these giant ships and turn it into public art. And as we walked and drove around that facility, which of course anyone who's ever been there knows it's a city unto itself, and a really closed kind of necessarily so world where there's as the guy was telling me, there's a police department and a hospital. There's also their own Chick-fil-A. They've got everything going so that they can work every hour of the day, 24 hours a day, to build what looks like to me, the Titanic. That might as well be what it is. And to know that they're building the biggest ship that they build in about 3 years' time, is really impossible to fathom when you see what the bits and pieces that actually come together to make that what it is and what it will be. A key player in national security and the global exploration and fight and all of this, that is really what America's about. So anyway, to see that these pieces of steel that are coming off the line as these talented welders and fabricators of building ships are then going to be put in the hands of students who are charting their own adventures and trying to figure out what they're going to do in life and learning how to weld. That's just a remarkable story. And it's actually in the material itself. What the design ends up being is one thing, but just the mere fact that we're able to take that as part of the process. And it's not an easy process. And that's not the part that gets, publicized, or the part that you see at the end of the day, but it's very core and integral to what it's about. And without that process-based work, the end result doesn't have that saturation of meaning, that immersion in place that it might otherwise have.
And it ends up being art that taught, art with a soul. And when I say art with a soul, it means that the process involved people so they sort of understood how all these interconnected pieces come together, whether it's the young people involved in the project or Ingalls on the other side and all dots in between. One of the things I enjoy about talking to Paige Roberts, the executive director from the Jackson County Chamber, who you know well, because she understands so well that it takes a lot of players in a community to make it tick. I mean, it just does. And one of our keys to success going forward, which I talk about on the show all the time, is this notion of building places where people want to live. And when you just don't stick a piece of art up there that's meaningless. When you have, community engagement around it, a process that leads to something that then means something, that's what makes the communities a great place to live, work, and play. And when people think about the Walter Anderson Museum and Julian Rankin in particular, they may not realize that this outreach, this community building aspect to what you do is a big part of what the museum is all about. It's not just the physical facility, the meaning of Walter Anderson and the other artists that you're able to come in contact with, but it's this ability to bring process to other organizations that do community building. And that's kind of what makes you tick, isn't it?
I think it's what makes this museum so unique and positioned to do so much of this work, because Walter Anderson, he had a home base at Shearwater Pottery where he and his family were creating work, but then he would go out to the islands and live and, commune with nature and come back with other genius and visionary products and paintings and so forth. And so for us to think about what you're saying, it makes total sense that we would expand that idea into the contemporary landscape, which does not just include the wilderness, and we do things on Horn Island certainly, but also in cities and the urban landscape like Pascagoula. And again, this idea that everything works together in this ecology and network, with Paige Roberts in the Jackson County Chamber, they're one of our advisory partners on this Pascagoula Public Art Enterprise project, certainly the school district, and then you've got funders, Mississippi Power and Mark Everson and M&M Bank and Mako McCarty Foundation and Main Street Pascagoula. We're actually occupying a storefront downtown as a design studio where we meet and really model revitalization by injecting energy into a once vacant storefront. So, and even the ideas for the sculptures are coming from the community. So when the students go out and they talk to people and they hear what Pascagoula means to them or what the Gulf Coast means to them, that's the source material. And that's for the source material that we all have, which is looking around us and seeing, what does a community need? How do we balance the history with where we're going? And that's what we're doing at the museum. We're balancing the legacy of Walter Anderson, preserving these objects that hopefully will be here forever and harken back to the mid 20th century when he worked, but at the same time engaging contemporary people, communities, artists to make new things that are surprising and high tech and STEM based. And so that's a thing that not all museums, certainly not all art museums, can do.
I love it, Julian. And what's beautiful about it is it results in something important, but you're also planting seeds in the young people who are engaged in it that might not really grow for 10 or 15, 20 years down the road. We don't know where the accumulation of all this kind of thinking emanates. You mentioned Horn Island. Recently on a trip to Horn Island to just do some wade fishing, I was doing some walking some of the backwaters of Horn Island, and there were ospreys flying and white egrets and ducks flying by, and within 20 feet of us a 10-foot alligator. But the fishing was good, and I stopped for a second. I looked around. I thought, literally, I'm not joking. Where else in the world can you see this setting? And when you can take that setting through Walter Anderson's art and others, take that setting and combine it with sort of the industrialization of Jackson County and bring meaning to all of that and plant seeds in the process, I'm not overstating how special this place is when we focus on things like that. It's very special, isn't it?
Yeah, and it continues all the way down the coast, east and west. If you look at the different types of communities, different types of landscapes we have, I mean, some of these, federally operated, national reserves where, they're doing the controlled burns to bring back longleaf pine savanna, or, the marine education that happens. Certainly you think about Stennis, and then you've got Ingalls and Horn Island, all these things in such close proximity. And then, of course, the communities, whether it's Bay St. Louis, Ocean Springs, Pass Christian, Biloxi, Pascagoula, everyone has their own Long Beach unique identity. And so we are in this space, and I know you're a big proponent of this regional, certainly, approach to marketing, but also just to existing, is we all have to understand that our proximity is our greatest strength. And the richness, just like Faulkner talked about a postage stamp, that's where you come from. There's a story, every story perhaps, that's told in that single postage stamp. That's what Walter Anderson did. He focused on a specific place. And it just so happened that this is one of the most ecologically and industrially diverse places that the country has. And it's just a really cool thing to be able to see those connections. Everyone can see them. Not everyone sees them all the time, but I think it's our job as community leaders to illuminate where there are connections that can be made that can make the place stronger.
And, Julian, you're a gifted communicator. You really are. I say that. I've been around some gifted communicators. I've been around Pulitzer Prize winners, and you're very gifted. And And what I think what it does is when people connect to your words and what you're saying, the goal of what you're saying is that when we are born and raised here, we see this sort of at the center of the universe, and we take for granted all these incredible things that we have. And as we grow older, we get wiser, and we say, whoa, stop for a minute. I'm going to go to Walter Anderson Museum and try to understand more about what it is Julian is trying to say, so that we don't lose sight of how special our place is. And this is the place we want other people to move to. Anyway, I wish we had more time together, Julian, but you're a special dude. I really enjoy our time together, and we should have you back more often. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
You bet. Julian Rankin from the Walter Anderson Museum of Art, and we'll see you after this.
Listen live or on demand and watch episodes of Coast Vue on your laptop, desktop, or on your phone or tablet by going to supertalkmsgulfcoast.com.
Hey, guess what? Bob is back. Now at 106.3, playing the 80s, 90s, and whatever.
I get knocked down, but I get up again.
Check us out. The new Bob 106.3.
Feeling down? Here's your prescription for a daily dose of good news and positive vibes. Good Things with Rebecca Turner. Every afternoon, Rebecca highlights all the good things happening right here in the state you call home. Daily exposure to Good Things with Rebecca Turner may cause smiling, feelings of positivity, happiness, and even laughter. When you experience these symptoms, tell your friends to listen.
Okay.
Weekdays starting at 2 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi, and now on Amazon Alexa devices.
Hey, South Mississippi, the future has arrived. It's 2021, and at J. Allen Toyota, we're here to serve you. Want to let you know that we have Allen's lifetime warranty on every new Toyota we sell. That also comes with Toyota Care. That's 2 years and 25,000 miles of complimentary maintenance. We have a great rental department. Our service department's ready to take care of your current vehicle. We're rolling out J. Allen certified pre-owned for 2021. You got to come to I-10 exit 38 right here in Gulfport. You're going to love what we have to offer. When you think Toyota, think Allen Toyota.
Get the scoop on what happened in college football and what to expect in the NFL. Each Sunday on Sports Sunday with Michael Borky. Get the story behind the stats, 8 to 10 a.m. on SuperTalk Mississippi, supertalk.fm, and watch the show on supertalk.tv. SuperTalk Mississippi. We're more than just words. This is where the story of your state is told. Proud to cover the Magnolia State like nobody else. SuperTalk Mississippi.
When COVID started, Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply began stocking very hard-to-find PPE items to make our community a safer place. When Amazon and other mega internet companies were out of stock or inflating prices, Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply was providing local schools and businesses vital PPE supplies at fair prices. They were even sending thousands of dollars of PPE supplies free to local schools in need with help from other local business leaders. The next time your office needs PPE supplies, office furniture, or products to keep your business operating, consider a local company that supports your ball teams, cheerleaders, and area homeless. Consider Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply, the local guys that keep your prices fair, your service and selection excellent, and your health our business. Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply. We sell that too. Buy local.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
From outer space, visitors from another world. We've had contact with bug-eyed monsters.
This is actually a flying saucer.
Flying saucer?
I'm from another planet.
Where late nights are kind of weird.
Well, they must have a reason for their visit.
The unexplained, the weird, and the downright creepy. Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. Late nights. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Hey, I'm Steve Azar, and you never know who or what you'll hear when I spend a Mississippi Minute with my friends. Talking to Paul Thorne, Mississippi true treasure, really incredible recording artist, singer, songwriter, has been doing it a long time, doing it the right way.
It's almost like a Forrest Gump thing because, I was a boxer, / I worked in a furniture factory, / I had a gig 2 nights a week playing my acoustic guitar in a pizza restaurant, / I was in the National Guard, and, all this stuff was going on at the same time. / I had a writing contract with Rick Hall and Fame.
In a Mississippi Minute. Be sure to check out In a Mississippi Minute with me, Steve Azar, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk Mississippi app, and now available on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher.
For something new and unique in talk radio, take a listen to The Ben Shapiro Show. Every day, we're driving the debate in America with the fastest moving, hardest hitting, most comprehensive, fact-based commentary on the radio. We don't hold back. We never shy away from telling you the truth. Our show is a meeting place of ideas. We have the most important guests and the biggest thinkers in America.
Weeknights at 9.
For something new and unique in talk radio, take a listen to The Ben Shapiro Show
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
Just seems to me people have so much invested in not telling the truth.
When you want the truth.
Simply because it might hurt some feelings.
And nothing but the truth.
Lose some subscribers.
You want the Gallo Radio Show.
I just think in this audience, you still believe that if you tell the truth, you come out ahead.
The Gallo Radio Show.
And if you tell yourself otherwise, you're lying to yourself.
Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Hey, guess what? Bob is back, now at 106.3, playing the 80s, 90s, and whatever.
I get knocked down, but I get up again.
Check us out, the new Bob 106.3.
And now, it's Coast Vue with Ricky Mathews. Brought to you by J. Allen Toyota and AGJ Systems and Networks on SuperTalk 103.1 FM.
Welcome back to Coast Vue. And I say this every time I get finished with a conversation with Julian Rankin, but he's one of the bright young stars here in coastal Mississippi, and the work that he's doing, not just at the Walter Anderson Museum, but the work beyond the Walter Anderson Museum to do community building is really important. And that's actually about where we're about to head with our next guest, Ronnie Harris. But before we get to him, I want to ask Kyle to come in and just real quick say, Kyle, did you see where Elon Musk, his net worth went up this week, $25.6 billion in one day. He now is worth $255.2 billion, the richest billionaire Forbes has ever tracked. Did you see that, man?
I did not. I thought I saw a headline where he was it him that's going to go back to space?
Maybe, you know, he and Amazon founder, you may know, are just they're in a race with each other in the space deal. But what I tell you what caused their stock to get to rise so rapidly is Hertz ordered 100,000 Tesla vehicles, 100,000. And so now Tesla is worth $1 trillion, and it's the only non-digital, non-media company company that's now worth $1 trillion. He joins Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft as worth $1 trillion. What would you do with $255 billion, Kyle?
Do a lot of fishing.
I bet you would. And you'd have a big boat that launches a smaller boat that launches a smaller boat that launches a smaller boat, and it would be fun, wouldn't it, man?
And a separate captain for each one.
Well, look, Tesla is worth more now, is worth more than 19 other automakers, including Toyota, GM, Honda, Nissan, all of them combined. That one company is. And what this is essentially a major statement about where electric vehicles are headed and how the market supports what the future really has to say about that. So you think you'll own an electric vehicle at some point?
No, I'm still trying to go backwards and get a real carburetor.
Oh yeah, you're all about, you want to relive the moments of the fine moments of those double barrel, carburetors, huh?
I want dual quadrajets.
I'm sure you do. Anyway, Kyle, thank you, man. I appreciate you. Let's come over now to Ronnie Harris. He's the president of Sacred Roots. He's someone I just bumped into. I was at a meeting in Ocean Springs, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago, and he and 2 other people were coming in, and we just bumped into each other. And I was incredibly impressed just on the first impression because he's so articulate and so committed to the community. He's doing a lot of good work in the community. We're going to talk about that in a second. But before we go any further, Ronnie, how you doing, my friend?
Doing very well, and it's really good to be with you. Thank you for having me, bro.
It's good. It's great to have you too. So tell me about Sacred Roots.
Yeah. Sacred Roots really started sitting on a number of porches in the neighborhood as a kid. You know, that common place sort of rearing we have along the coast, where the elders are sort of transmitting story after story, narrative after narrative to you. And so I was sort of raised up with this sense of vocational call. And so Sacred Roots is really been my professional way of living out this sense of vocation. And so Sacred Roots sort of gets at that. It hints at this reality that we all sort of have deep roots, deep sacred roots that really emerges from faith, family, and this notion of freedom. And so as I became a professional, I was able to start an organization that has been involved in international development, doing some brainstorming, design thinking. They were like, so like, what's in your gut? What should we call it? And I was like, well, you know, the thing that just keep emerging is Sacred Roots, because again, my sense of vocational call to community building comes from this deep-seated sacred place.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with someone. I spent a lot of time talking about the Mississippi Delta. I have a place up in the Mississippi Delta, and I think that Mississippi, in order for it to solve I think to solve its ranking, let's put it that way, that you've got to go to where the biggest challenges, both economic, social, and others, you got to go to where the biggest problems in the state exist. And the Mississippi Delta region has historically been a place where there are big challenges and a lot of efforts underway. There's a lot of, I think one of the biggest actually is going to be broadband access and what that's going to do to create a higher opportunity for education in ways that we have not had before. But I was having a conversation with someone, and they said it was a New York researcher who sort of landed on the ground in Delta. I don't exactly remember which city it was, but she was kind of working her way into one of the small towns, predominantly African American, and she came upon this old house and a long driveway. She worked her way down the driveway, and she was really kind of scared to just walk up and meet this person, and she describes the process she went through to break the ice. But it was an elderly African American woman. She's sitting on the porch, and what this researcher tells is this great story of how this woman offered her a glass of sweet tea and pulled up a chair, and they talked for hours. And she said it just completely changed her whole perception of the whole situation, and that we had so much to learn about the evolution and about the opportunity by just sitting down and talking to someone on the front porch. That's the way she described it. But it's true, isn't it?
I agree.
So look, what I'm interested in, okay, so did you grow up in Gulfport?
I did, yeah.
So tell me about your education.
So grew up in the heart of Gulfport, went to Central Junior High School, which is now the federal building. Which, I have all kinds of mixed feelings about that walking past that building these days, but it's good that it's in really good adaptive reuse. So that's always exciting. It could have been torn down. So it's exciting to see it, active and well taken care of. So Central Junior High, Gulfport High School, played on back-to-back state championship basketball teams. Graduated in '88, went on to the Mississippi Gulf Coast Junior College. After that, went off to the military with the intent to have the college fund be able to prepare me for and pay for college. And so I, after serving in Germany, came back home and went and finished my degree and went on to get a master's degree from the University of Aberdeen in Scotland. And so been fortunate, very fortunate to have not just good people providing me with good stories, but a good solid foundation where people have sort of all along the journey have sort of helped me to sort of achieve what I've been able to achieve.
It is interesting to hear Scotland, Germany. You know, the time away has a way of giving you perspective that enables you. Sometimes you get too close to a situation. It's good sometimes to take a step back and see how it fits into the larger world. But boy, you can't trade anything for that perspective, that international perspective, can you?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. In fact, I've often said to folk, I don't know how literal I feel about it, but you know, I've said to folk, you know, I think an experience in the military for every young man and possibly woman would be something that would be beneficial for years to come. It sort of dovetails with the story of the young lady that ended up in the Delta. I have a friend, Roland Hertz, who works in the Delta. He says of cultural heritage and tourism that you almost have to add education in there, that it's actually cultural heritage, education, and tourism. And having him say that to me, it sort of underscored for me how powerful experiences outside of your neighborhood you grew up in or outside of the state you grew to love sort of forges this sensibility about like its worth, right? So, you know, you're a Mississippi boy and folk from all over the world will say, you know, wow, what was that like for you as a young Black boy to be raised in Mississippi? And I said, well, it was great, right?
Yeah.
But I think this perspective is forged all the more when you get outside the neighborhood, outside of you know, the community, to see the extent to which, there's so much to be done in our neighborhood or along the coast, in the state of Mississippi. But we have the good bones, as they would say. We have the good bones. So,
well, we do, you know, and I talk about it all the time on the show that resiliency is at our core. And that since we face so many disasters, natural disasters, some man-made disasters over many years, that it creates a scenario where all the clutter and noise is washed away temporarily, where we can really see what really matters. And at the end of the day, it's us, it's the people that makes a difference. Yep. And no matter what your political persuasion or otherwise, we tend to want to help our neighbor in tough times, and we've got a great history of that. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Robert Matthew Harris, the president of Sacred Roots. I want to talk specifically about their Go Gulfport initiative, which is, I think, it kind of gives you a sense of what he's up to these days. We'll see you after this break.
You can also listen live to SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on your Amazon Alexa devices. Once you've enabled the skill, just say, Alexa, open SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Hey, guess what? Bob is back, now at 106.3, playing the 80s, 90s, and whatever.
I get knocked down, but I get up again.
Check us out, the new Bob 106.3.
Hey, South Mississippi, it's Jay Allen at Jay Allen Toyota, and I got something new for you for 2021. It's the Jay Allen Certified Collection. What that means is we selected our very best inventory with under 75,000 miles, and they're 6 years old or newer. That comes with a multi-point inspection, a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty, and a 3-day buyback guarantee. So come check out the Jay Allen Certified Pre-Owned Collection right here, I-10 exit 38 in Gulfport, or on allentoyota.com.
When COVID started, Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply began stocking hard-to-find PPE items. When Amazon and other mega internet companies were out of stock or inflating prices, Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply was providing local schools and businesses vital PPE supplies at fair prices. When your office needs PPE supplies, office furniture, or products to keep your business operating, consider Gulf Coast Business Furniture and Supply. We sell that too. Buy local.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
Just seems to me people have so much invested in not telling the truth.
When you want the truth.
Simply because it might hurt some feelings.
And nothing but the truth.
Lose some subscribers.
You want the Gallo Radio Show.
I just think in this audience, you still believe that if you tell the truth, you come out ahead.
The Gallo Radio Show.
And if you tell yourself otherwise, you're lying to yourself.
Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Hey, I'm Steve Azar, and you never know who or what you'll hear when I spend a Mississippi Minute with my friends. We're talking to Del Berra. Take me back to growing up and what it was like in the household with a dad like Yogi Berra.
You know, we grew up with his funny sayings. You know, I remember Dad managing the Mets, and me, Larry, and Timmy are watching the game on TV. And all of a sudden, two streakers run out of the stands on TV, and the camera slips away from them. So when he gets home, me, Larry, and Timmy say, "Hey, Dad, those streakers, what were they, boys or girls? We need to know." And Dad looked us right in the eye and said, "I couldn't tell. They had bags over their heads."
In a Mississippi Minute. Be sure to check out In a Mississippi Minute with me, Steve Azar, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk Mississippi app, and now available on iTunes, Google Play.
Hey, guess what? Bob is back, now at 106.3, playing the 80s, 90s, and whatever.
I get knocked down, but I get up again.
Check us out, the new Bob 106.3.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Ronnie Harris, the president of Sacred Roots. And, you know, if you're a regular listener to Coast View, you know that I talk a lot about this, that coastal Mississippi is a collection of communities, each with its own unique sense of place. Within each of those communities, there are communities that have their unique sense of place. I often talk about coastal Mississippi being a melting pot, that there are people from all over the world who have come here. And certainly this goes back a long, long way, but it actually is more recent with what things like the military has helped us with, bringing lots of people who've been all over the world, who've lived all over the world. They choose coastal Mississippi to retire at. So we have this incredible melting pot here, the sense of place. Placemaking is one of the keys to our success going forward. You think about the new economy, you think about the creative class, you think about remote working, which is going to be a reality in the wake of the pandemic, the opportunity to people to choose their community. They'll choose it based on, is it a great place to live, work, and play, as opposed to the old industrial model, which is relocate a big industrial plant somewhere and then people will crop to that. The new economy is that people will choose where they want to live. And Ronnie Matthew, I want to say Maddox for some reason, because my uncle's name is Ronnie Maddox, and and my last name is Matthews, so it's a trick with tongue, tricky on my tongue. But Ronnie Matthew Harris, who's the president of Sacred Roots, has spent a lot of time talking about placemaking and bringing communities together. And I think a great example of that is the work that he's doing in his what is called the Go Gulfport project. Tell me more about that initiative, Ronnie.
Yeah, Go Gulfport, I kind of stumbled on the work, but Go Gulfport is an example of placemaking, cultural heritage and tourism, bike advocacy, all coming together, converging together to offer a community an opportunity to speak into the direction of its future. Quite oftentimes, folk going into a community to do community building do it from a needs-based perspective. I've always been adversely attracted to the asset-based community development. So I'm always interested in what could we come into a community to do by way of asking questions about their assets, like what do you have to offer? And in most communities in Mississippi and along the Gulf Coast, we have assets that are untapped. We have narratives, stories. You reference all the time this notion of resilience on the coast. Well, I think the world are attracted to stories of resilience, and I think that we ought to sort of unearth those stories, those narratives, and Go Gulfport is sort of a vehicle by which I use to get people to have those conversations. So if we're on a community bike ride, the bike ride is designed to point out some architectural design that dates back to the early 19th century. It's supposed to orientate folk to historic narratives from the neighborhood, all with an interest to sort of build community cohesion, build community interest to see the community be developed. But Go Gulfport sort of gives us that vehicle to do that. Oftentimes folks say, well, Ronnie, essentially, isn't that like a community bike club? And I go, well, actually, at one level it is, but it's also a community-based education program where on a bike ride, we're giving people a glimpse at what are community assets, gems in the community, and community heritage, and tourism dovetails, as you know, with development. People and place sort of coming together, and so we're always looking for that to be the sort of end goal, is how do we get people to understand the value of their place, and in so doing be prepared to enter into the chaos, really, of what does it take to develop that. And
hey, so look, in the short, I'm sorry, finish your thought. Yes.
No, I was just saying, and we here on the coast, we've seen the chaos associated with coming together to sort of deliver on tourism lately.
Yeah,
so I was
for sure. But to me, I think it's just part of a maturation process that
that's right.
Community goes through changes, and sometimes it can be a rocky road, but that's okay. Yeah. I mean, it's just part of the process. Hey, listen, I remember well the Broadmoor grocery store. The Broadmoor community. I used to go there as a young person because I had friends who lived and were raised in that area. In the short time we have left, tell me real quick the effort you're involved in to preserve that.
Yeah. Just recently, a couple of years ago, my family and I came across an opportunity to purchase the old Broadmoor community store that had been closed down since, on the heels of Katrina, BP oil spill, and then sort of economic decline in the community. We had an opportunity to acquire it, and I believe that it is this opportunity right on the cuffs of two historic communities, one historic white, one historic black, but it's at that juncture, it's at that corner store that we all kind of came together. We all share some common stories. And so I would love to see it be developed, a representation of a gem that I think could, again, ultimately be a catalyst for redevelopment in that area. And to have you come back and have coffee, sip some scotch, or we don't know necessarily what it'll be, but we're hoping that it comes online and, again, serve as a catalyst for redevelopment in the neighborhood.
Well, I think that is terrific, and I think people who were raised in that area, both white and blacks who were raised in that area, will have fond memories of the role that the Broadmoor store played, and thanks for your work to try to preserve that. Anyway, we're going to continue the conversation with you as time goes on. I look forward to doing that, Ronnie, but for now, our time together is done. It's been a pleasure, my friend.
Likewise. Thank you.
This has been Ronnie Matthew Harris, the president of Sacred Reach. We'll see you soon. Take care and have a great day.
I shall. You do likewise. Thanks.
Follow SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on Facebook. Facebook.com/SuperTalk MS Coast 103.1.